Okay, I think we're going to get started. Good evening, welcome to this Environment, Community Safety and Engagement Scrutiny Commission person. My name is Councillor Esme Hicks and I'm the Chair of the Commission. Before we start the meeting, I've got a few housekeeping announcements. There are no planned fire alarm tests this evening. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point. That's St John's Churchyard off Drury. Council security staff will be available. Public toilets are located off the main reception area. Please switch your mobile phone to silent whilst it. This meeting is being live streamed to the Southwark Council YouTube channel via the Zoom platform. Recording of the meeting after the meeting. May I remind members to raise your hand if you wish to speak, and please wait until I've given you. Members of the public are welcome to record, screenshot, or tweet the public proceedings of the meeting. Copy of the council's protocol for available on. We do have some. On to confirmation of voting members. Please can voting members present in the room and the Scrutiny project.
I am Councillor David Parton.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Maggie Browning and I'm
well timed. I speak slowly. Theo.
I'm the project.
Thank you. On to notification of any items of business which are urgent. So there are no urgent items. However, I'd like to take this opportunity to let you know that the streets for people zoning item has been deferred to the autumn, so we won't be right, but it'll give a little bit of time for the items. On to disclosure of interest and dispensations. Does any member wish to declare any interests or dispensations in respect of any item of business? So that takes us on to item 4 then, which is our first substantive item. Please can I welcome the Cabinet Member and joint officers to present the Customer Experience Plan going to Cabinet in September this year. So Councillor Stephanie Cryan, Cabinet Member for Equalities, Democracy and Finance, Eugene Nixon, Head of Strategy and Compliance, Ade Adaremi, Head of Customer Services, and Lauren Stocks, Service Development. You'd be kind enough to introduce yourselves, just so we all know who's who, and then I'll hand over to you for your presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Cryan, I'm Cabinet Member for Finance.
Hi, evening, Dominic Kane, Director, Customer and Exchequer.
Eugene Nixon, Head of Strategy, Compliance and Customer Exchequer.
Ade Adaremi, Head of Customer Operations.
I'll do a quick introduction. We do have a presentation for you, but I just want to say out that first of all, this is I really wanted this to come to the scrutiny before it came to Cabinet, so it's a really good opportunity for pre-scrutiny. I think the customer experience plan it is a strong plan, but I think it would be strengthened by having that pre-scrutiny and any recommendations that come out from this commission to help strengthen it before it actually gets agreed, hopefully by Cabinet in September, and then becomes the plan that we work on between now and 2030. So it's quite exciting to do a little bit of pre-scrutiny. I've not been on for quite a while on that. So the customer experience plan really sets out what we want to do as an organisation to improve the experience of residents and businesses who contact the council in whatever way is best for them. So whether it be via online, through digital platforms, through the phone or face-to-face, it's really, really important that first contact that somebody has with us is the right contact for them and they get a really good experience from it. So we've done a lot of work, which will probably be in the slides as well, around this in consultation and surveying residents and businesses around that, just over 6,000 of them. about what they want. I think some of the things that have come out of this probably aren't surprising, as we have a young borough and an ever-changing world, but younger people would like a really good digital service to be able to contact us, whereas older people would prefer to contact us by phone or face-to-face. But we're really, really clear that when they do contact us, they want the right information by the right person at the right time around that. So we've pulled all of the information from this together, and we've come up with a plan that Dom and Eugene and Ade are going to go through. And I just want to thank the three of them, because there's a lot of work that's been put into this pre and post sort of drawing up the plan around that, and sort of the promise, the pillars and the plan within that, to make sure that we really do have a robust customer experience plan. But it's a plan that evolves, because it is a 5-year plan, and we know that, you know, people's ways of wanting to contact us will change over those 5 years. We also know that technology will change, you know, the use of AI and things like that, and how we can start to integrate that into things will change as well. So this is really very much it's not a fixed point in time that this is the plan and then that's it for 5 years. We want to make sure, and it sort of goes hand in hand with the digital our digital strategy as well, around that as well. So I think that's probably my introduction on this, and then I'll hand over to Dom and Eugene and Adi for the presentation they pulled together for you all.
Great, thank you, Councillor Coyne. Just before, Eugene is going to take us through the slides. Just from my perspective, you're going to hear about pillars, promises, and the plan. Really, from our perspective, it's about action. So it's action orientated. So we're looking at the delivery of a plan. So whilst it may, you know, it's policy, it's strategy, it's all of those things, but it's also what are we doing practically around the council, whether it's delivery within departments to ensure that we're tackling consistency in the way that we approach customer service delivery. So the focus is very much about action. We're pointing to existing plans within council, as Councillor Coyne said, so whether that's 2030, the council strategy, or other strategies like good landlord programme of work, plan, etc., to help delivery. And as you also said, you know, it's very much around digitally enabled services. So digital practices within technology is also a key area for us to focus on as well. So from my perspective, standards, setting the standards, framework for delivery, and consistency in the approach we adopt customer service across to improve the customer experience for everyone within our borough. Eugene, over to you.
Thank you, Dom. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background. Obviously, Customer Exchequer, Dom's the director. We're the professional lead for customer services, and we'll be working and have been working with the rest of the council on the formation of a new council-wide customer experience plan. And that new plan is replacing previous customer access strategy, which elapsed at the end of last year. So the new plan its fundamental aim really is to transform, as Councillor Coyne was saying, our customers' experience of interaction with our council services. So in the main, moving from a data or key performance indicator driven strategy to one that has the customer at its heart. I mean, for example, really it's important that we set standards for how quickly we answer the phone, and we do. But it's just as important that we set standards for what happens after that initial transaction. The development of the plan has included feedback from residents, businesses, and other internal and external stakeholders, with lots of varying engagement with a wide range of what we call non-universal council services. And we've also captured the views of some of the staff responsible for delivering those services. We've formed a strategy and the plan that goes with it. And just to clarify what we mean by non-universal services, those are services where a customer, typically a resident, a local resident or business, contacts the council online, in person, or by phone to report an issue or request a service. So the journey so far, in a sense, this journey began back in late January this year, when the approach was endorsed by cabinet members and chief officers of the Strategy and Policy Board. After market testing, we'd already identified Think's insight and strategy as the preferred supplier. Their independence, expertise, and experience would lend credibility to the consultation and allow it to be delivered at greater pace. We started work with Think's back in February, early March to design and plan the delivery of the consultation that was actually carried out in late March and early April. We'll say a bit more about the survey in a moment, but the consultation included roundtables with businesses, BCS organisations, and 14 workshops, staff and residents looking at specific customer journeys. And those took place at Southwark Libraries at a series of evening events. And we are, of course, grateful to the dozens of Southwark residents, businesses and council staff who contributed to that effort. Next slide, please. The consultation itself was completed by Easter, and we immediately started working a plan, engaging colleagues right across the council. And as that plan started to take shape, we also sought to ensure it was properly aligned, as Don was saying, with some other relevant council plans, notably the technology and digital strategy, more recently the Good Landlord plan, and the still emerging People plan. We've also begun to socialise the plan at all levels of the organisation, recently taking it to the Chief Management Team, Directors Forum, and obviously we're delighted to be here this evening to share the plan with this committee for pre-scrutiny. Next slide, please. I said we go back to the survey, and clearly that was very much the centrepiece of the research and consultation. More than 110,000 residents were invited to take part, and we were pleased that more than 6,000 did so, mostly online, with a smaller number doing so by phone. The survey explored residents' experience of using a wide range of those non-universal council services in the previous 12 months. So going back to sort of winter of 2024. The workshops, were in person. They explored the experience of residents who'd used one of those 7 services you see listed on the slide that were selected for a closest examination through the survey to get a sense of what they liked about their experience, what they didn't like, what could be done to make that better. Actually, those 7 journeys you see there were selected on the advice of cabinet members and chief officers precisely because they were believed to include pain points. Them. Most of those customer journeys you can see related to the experience of living in a council home or other council housing services, a couple relating to environmental matters, so reporting noise or reporting fly tipping, and one to adult care services. Though the customer service for all of those will, of course, encompass contact with the council by phone, mainly through the contact centre that ADI runs, online or less commonly face-to-face. 6,000 is a really good response to a survey of this kind, and from the demographics of the response, we could see that they were representative of the borough's population as a whole, certainly based on comparison with the latest census data. Skews a little bit younger, perhaps a little bit more likely to say they were disabled, but overall, they look very much like Southwark. Next slide, please. So these are the summary of the key findings. The residents surveyed were actually overall pretty satisfied with Southwark as a place to live. The views of council services are a bit more mixed, but generally, quite good overall. Perceptions of the council among those who've used council services in the last year are very strongly influenced by residents' actual experience. So that experience of speaking with someone, that experience of trying to do something online, really influences people's views of the council as a whole, and to some extent their views of Southwark as a place to live. Actually, what it also told us is that most residents seldom contact the council, but the vast majority do so at least once a year. When they do contact the council, most have a fairly good experience. Satisfaction is highest for relatively simple transactional services, registering to vote or joining a library or leisure centre. In fact, satisfaction with libraries and leisure centres is very high. However, for those with more complex cases, or where their reason for contacting council is perhaps a bit higher, it's more, higher stakes or more emotive, satisfaction is significantly lower. And the work of carried out at the in-person workshops with the users of those services confirmed this. And indeed, the hypothesis that the customer journey selected for close examination contained the greatest pain points was confirmed by the overall research findings. We also found, not quite yet. I mean, sorry, just on point 4, I mean, we said that on the more negative side, in terms of the findings in the research, residents tended to describe the council as a bit slow and unresponsive, and there were some individual reports of inconsiderate behaviour on the part of staff, though those findings emerged from the workshops, and I know that obviously that's concerning. The survey results found that more than 8% of respondents found that the staff they spoke to contacting council were polite and helpful. So really, in terms of what do residents see as the priorities for improving the customer experience, they tend to revolve mainly around things, communication, particularly at the outset, staff training, and greater feedback on the outcome of their service request. Next slide, please. These are the 4 pillars on which the strategy was based. We won't dwell too much on these. We'll move on quickly to the next slide, where we set out customer promise. This is really at the heart of the strategy and the plan. Really setting expectations for residents and service users, what they can expect from us in the future. So we'll just go through those. So number 1, and this came through really strongly from the research. It's something that residents expect to see. So when you contact us to request a service by any channel, we should let you know what you should expect to happen next, and just as importantly, when. The sense is that doesn't happen often enough now, and it's an area for improvement. The second standard, we will strive to keep you up to date on the progress of your request so that you don't have to. That I can attest many of the phone calls or people contact us. Number 3, wherever possible, where the council can't help you with your request, for example, where someone else, a third party or agency, is responsible for providing you what you need, we will signpost you to someone who can. 4th, whenever you contact us and for whatever reason, you should find us welcoming, courteous, and respectful. 5, and very much along the same lines, we will be empathetic and understanding of your personal situation when you are contacting us at a moment of crisis. 6, we will be clear on how to contact us about an issue and what the council can, and just as important, cannot do to help. 7, we will make it easier for you to provide feedback after you contact us for any reason or by channel. Finally, number 8, where we fail to live up to our standards, we should apologise and put things right quickly. Next slide, please. So this really sets out how the standards, those standards that I've just described, will be actualised starting this year and over the next few years up to 2030. Transforming the customer experience. So we're looking at developing a standards-based training package for all of our frontline staff, accompanied by a comms campaign to raise awareness among residents and businesses of what they should expect. Enhancing the digital experience, not just facilitating greater use of digital channels, but improving the user experience when doing so. Progress is expected this year, including for those still calling the contact centre. I might have an opportunity to say a bit more about some of that later. We also expect to see progress towards delivery of a much improved online channel for reporting and tracking housing repairs, and I think that some of that's already set out in the landlord plan. Creating a responsive customer experience, so being clear on what we will do next and when, and offering a more joined up experience. One of the things that came across from research was that people see us as one council, but often find that their experience of using services is fragmented. We want to do something about that. Supporting our most vulnerable customers, and this clearly is about recognising that for some of our more vulnerable customers with complex needs, face-to-face services will continue to be important. So we're working with colleagues in libraries, housing needs, and children and adult services to revamp our face-to-face service offer. Next slide, please. Measuring success. So we'll be conducting, the council has already carried out a couple of resident surveys in the last 12 months, first two. We expect those will continue every 6 months, pretty much indefinitely. And that will allow us to benchmark satisfaction with the experience and use of council services and monitor progress in the coming years. We will also look to develop a more consistent approach to capturing instant or real-time post-service feedback from residents and service users. And we aim to increase overall resident satisfaction with council services and their experience of using them by about 1/3 by 2030, and also by improving the customer experience. We expect that the number of complaints and members' inquiries to fall as customers' needs and expectations are more widely met. And then moving on to the final slide, just confirming some of the next steps. As Councillor Quine was saying, we'll be taking this to Cabinet in September. And we'll be working with services as we move into the autumn in terms of delivery of the detailed actions, a summary of which I set out. And that's kind of it, Don. I'll pass it back to you just to close.
Thanks. I think we'll leave it open to questions. I think that covered everything.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I had a couple of questions from members. So the customer standards are really a key part of the plan, comes out really strongly. You talked about there's going to be a training rollout relating to that. Could you say a little bit more about what that might look like, and then what will the embedding of that look like on an ongoing basis as well?
Thank you. Yeah, from our perspective, we want to reinvigorate the approach to customer service within the council. So we're likely to work together to commission some external support to deliver cross-departmental training, which will be offered for all frontline services. So, not just those in contact centre, we're talking about resident services officers, we're talking about anybody, library staff, anybody that has resident contact across the council. So we're still finalising detail on that, but that's the offer will be council-wide, as Eugene said, the communications plan that sits behind that across the council.
Thank you. And just related to that, so I was really heartened to see the later part of the presentation and in the plan itself, the plan to research months and get that real feedback on how it's going. What sort of day-to-day measures and controls are you thinking about putting in place in terms of ensuring customer standards are adhered to on a day-to-day basis?
Thank you. Yeah, good question. So in partnership with our organisational development team, we're ensuring that customer service is at the heart of people's work plans. So from our perspective, very much at the point that people are being assessed on their performance, customer services will form part of their work plan. Only that, as we said earlier, we're pointing to various different plans across the council in relation to customer service delivery, because we set the standards, but the standards and upholding the standards are also every director's, every service manager's, every staff member's responsibility to uphold. So whilst we will have performance metrics, customer satisfaction surveys across the council, we don't want to reinvent existing surveys that already exist or existing measures that sit within the council. We'll very much be pulling that together to ensure that we capture it in a consistent way across the council.
Thank you. And just one last question before I move on to members. So can I just be clear on the positioning of this plan document that we received as well? So it's really good that it talks in the language of we are talking to the customer or the resident or the user of the service. Is that the intended purpose of this document, not just as an internal document, but something that talks to our residents as well about what we're promising for them?
Absolutely, yes. It's a public document, and not only we're setting our promises out in terms of the expectation, also expectation from a council perspective as well, in the ways that we expect to be treated, our frontline staff as well. It's very important that we set that out. Standard perspective.
Very helpful, thank you. There are some guess, jargony bits in there, like customer journey review and some of those other bits of language which I'd spotted, which was thoughtful about whether the layperson would understand what those are. That would be worth a look at. I've hogged the mic. Leo.
Thanks. This is really welcome. It's sort of very much kind of culture of continuous improvement, and I pick up certainly from my casework, and I had surgery just last weekend with 3 very vulnerable residents with quite complex cases. Their feedback was genuinely very positive about their experience with officers on their cases. So it's good to see that is reflected in here. I'm going to try and home in on bits that I think are missing, so bear with me on this. First bit is about, I didn't have a sense that this is looking at anything other than operational services rather than capital projects as well. I certainly found that the resident experience of engaging in capital projects has not really met up to the promises and standards that we're describing in this document. I certainly had in my ward, you may have been at the council assembly last week, we had residents from the Manor Estate who gave a deputation talking about building a big block on their estate that's been under scaffolding for many months with no communication about what's happening, and fear and rumours circulating. There's a council home scheme that's been on site for over 8 years, with very poor communication on what's happening next and what's up and so on. I've got a playground project that had the money approved 1,500 days ago, still nowhere near being on site, and again, big long voids of communication with residents who are very bought into these sorts of things. So I just want to have some assurance that capital projects, which are an important part of customer experience, that we are applying these standards and promises, and we're measuring performance on those as well. That's my first one.
And you're absolutely right there. I think, whatever way somebody contacts the council for whatever reason, those standards should be in place. It is a council standard and it should be cross-council, cross-departmental. So not just if someone's requesting a service, but also if there are things like, what's happened with my Cleaner, Greener, Safer project and local seals you mentioned for the playground, but I know very well in your ward around that. So absolutely, these have to be standards that are set for the whole of the organisation.
That's reassuring. It'd be good if that could be made very explicit in this piece of work. When it comes to any upcoming engagement as well, we maybe separate out customer experience of delivery of capital projects all the way from CGS to parks to capital homes, big seal projects and so on, so that we can get an understanding of the breakdown. Certainly been an issue in my experience. One of the really tiny bit, if it's okay, I've just got 2 little extra questions, but that'll be fun over talking on the mic. One is just a niggle from a member perspective. You've got a very laudable aim to have a 30% reduction in complaints and member inquiries. And it's always annoyed me that whenever I put in a member inquiry, which is often just seeking information for an update or trying to develop policy or whatever, it goes to complaints at Southwark. So I'd just be eager if that metric we can kind of make distinctions a bit better.
And you are using members' review, aren't you, for chasing up?
Of course, yes.
That's the process.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
One final bit, and this is a big, crunchy, open question. Really interested in the AI tools and testing it. And I'm conscious that it just describes use of voice recognition and web chat. But actually, there are services that could potentially capture lots of information and deliver very best responses on key areas. So just interested for your thoughts on those areas where there's services which could be potentially greatly improved by where AI tools can.
Sure. As we said, this aligns with our technology and digital strategy. So working closely with TDS on how we approach AI development within the council. There are a number of things that we're looking at as part of just ongoing development. So at the moment, we've still got quite a lot of email traffic that's coming into the council around things like repairs. So for us, are there quick and easy ways that we can use translation tools through AI to understand exactly what's been asked for, and how we then translate that straight into a back office system. So it's much more easier and ease of access for customers rather than what tends to be a fair amount of manual intervention in the meantime. Other than that, there's a fair amount of work, test, and piloting around robotics within the council. I say that, but it's within specific areas, and there's always a word of caution around how we use that in the council as well. So we're very careful about how we roll out any approach to AI in certain areas. But like you, I think there's lots of opportunity there. We just have to ensure that we use it in the best way forward. And technology changes, as we all know, on a regular basis daily. So at the heart of some of our customer service contact, the contact centres just upgraded their telephony to a platform that enables a number of different developments to take place. So Addy's role over the next few months, we'll be looking at how we make best use of that as well to reduce contact within our contact centre. And that has been coming down, I have to say, over recent years. So we've gone from over 1 million calls into a contact centre to around about 600,000, which is significant development. And things like integrated e-forms. So if you look at services like council tax, for instance, there's a lot of integration into the back office system. It doesn't actually have to see a staff member because it's a clever tool, a clever way of capturing information at the first point of contact, and then being able to update some of our back office systems as well. So there are pockets of development within the council. Yes, could we do more? Of course. And we'll be working closely with TBS and taking advantage of new platforms such as the contact centre to ensure that that happens.
I was just going to say, those business sort of customer experience plan, a lot around the AI and how we use that is actually in the digital strategy, and there's a whole pillar around that within there. So there is a crossover around. So we've already agreed a lot of stuff around AI in that strategy, and this will pull out how we can use that for customer experience as well. So there's lots of good stuff happening in that sphere.
Thank you so much for this presentation. And just to add to what Councillor Collis was saying, I fully agree on the needs being a mechanism for like capital projects, because I do think that is sort of then comes to members a lot, essentially, like, where is this project, what's get money, and that whole piece, I think, of us sort of being the administrative go-between, following these matters up on behalf of residents, which obviously is our role to a degree. But I think actually creating that space is today, Chair. And also, second, the frustrating reply from complaints at Southwark in response to members' inquiries, which I feel like we've raised before, and I think is a curious administrative error that is ongoing. So just to agree with that as well. The two things that I was just going to ask about was the call centre and also Fix My Street. Are you able to comment on that? Is it okay if I talk about those two things? Yeah. So with Fix My Street, it's a small thing. And I think Fix My Street has a lot of positives and people seem to like it. A sort of point about it is if you report something that's on private land, you don't get a response saying that it's not the council's role to deal with this. You just get no response. So residents think that their fixing of my street is being ignored. Do you see what I mean? So if there could be like some kind of mechanism where if a Fix My Street request is made and on private land, therefore the council not going to deal with it, although maybe there could be some flexibility there potentially, then I think the residents need to be notified, because we do get residents saying, I've reported this fly tipping in that garden 5 times and no one's got back, and no one's done anything. The Fix My Street is useless, and then actually it transpires that's the problem. Just wanted to flag that. And then the call centre, could you just comment a bit about the call centre? Just it's a very sort of layman's point that residents just like being able to speak to somebody and feeling like it's being followed up properly, and just whether you envisage it's like a resource issue or a bit more about that kind of call centre journey would be helpful to know a bit more about.
Addy, to talk about, because that's what Addy's here for the call centre.
Okay.
And then you've got some updates on it.
Just popping the mic on, please, Addy.
Is he on? As ever, our biggest challenge is always demand at the center. And I'm not just talking about volumes now, we're talking about complexity and diversity, which means that with the limited resources we have, we're doing more than that to do. But we recognize that we are a predominantly voice-oriented local authority, and voice is not going anywhere. We're not taking what we're trying to do through voice experience, with intuition. So if you look at the IVR layers we have now mounted, IVR interactive voice recognition. This is when you come into the contact through the phone. The triage that we carry out now is more intuitive, and so we will find that people are spending less and less on queues now. Our average queuing time for most work streams. So if you call the contact center, you'll probably be on the line for maybe 3 minutes. But we also want to avail ourselves of the opportunity we have, new tool we have, Genesis Cloud. For instance, we just switched off, which enables people who have been on the queue for more than 4 minutes. Our spectrum threshold is 5 minutes. We don't want people to be on the queue for 5 minutes. So as they approach 4.5 minutes, they get prompted, given an option. We want to be called back at a less busy time. That takes pressure off the queue, pressure off the caller, because we can now call them the more convenient time. They're not hanging onto the phone. If they're commuting to work, they're not worried because we will ensure that we reach them. So we are not reducing the offering. It's just that we are being more intuitive and using the tools we have now currently to reach out to more. Our answer rate is in the 90s. We don't drop calls at all. So if people stay on, we eventually answer our calls. Today we were trending at 90%. So yeah, we will answer those calls. But it's the spectrum KPI that we struggle with. Sometimes people want to be they want us to take the call in 2 minutes, in 3 minutes. If they hang on just for a couple of minutes more, perhaps more questions. I don't know if that's the sort of information you are looking for.
I just want to Dom, if you want to visit to the contact centre to see what happens up there for this committee, you're more than welcome. And we can arrange it as part of this sort of scrutiny process around it. I think the other thing around what Addy was saying about, the callbacks, and sometimes some of the reasons that there are a lot of calls into contact centre are because people are chasing things up. So some of the things like the introduction of good landlord plan, repairs improvement plan, we will start to see those dropping off as well, so that people should only be calling once, and we're getting it right first time as well. So we're part of this, but part of the other plans that have just been agreed around that should start to stop, sort of reduce the number of calls coming in around that, because the chase up shouldn't be happening. We should be dealing with the department, whichever department is, should be dealing with that and getting it right first time. So there are other work streams that have been agreed and are happening, which feed into this as well. Yeah.
I'd be in favour of a visit to the contact.
As well, thank you.
Just coming back on Fix My Streets. So one of the key things, so I said at the start, so we're working with service departments on where they've already got plans in place to deliver improvements across various different areas. Fix My Street actually came up as part of the research in terms of surveys. So one of the key things was status updates. So we're looking at how with environment, are working hard to look at upgrading, updating the existing functionality of that system to ensure that they can get status updates and increase the information that's given to people. That's exactly the point of private land. We envisage environment made a note of that, and we will point back to, as part of this work, to updating our approach to customer service delivery improvements.
So environment are going to make a change that
They're working on it now.
Residents who report things, that they will get a response, even if it's like they'll actually, Okay.
David?
Thank you, Chair, and yeah, thank you for your presentation. It's been it's a really interesting plan. It's clearly my direction. I just kind of build on Councillor Banning's point about Fix My Street. I'd had almost the opposite experience. I had been told, effectively, I think I've flagged this specific case with you, but there's nothing the council could do anything. The way that it was done was ineffective. And it came across very unhelpfully. But obviously, as while I'm a member, obviously, if a member of the public received that, it would again seem that. So I would be keen to kind of know that obviously, yes, we're able to respond, but then also the response is helpful to the end user. I'd be keen about that actually. Yeah, I'll wrap my question up.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So we're working closely with environment colleagues. They will have the detail in relation to the update of the actual functionality of the app itself. And I haven't got the information to hand right now, but I'm happy to feed that back to committee at an appropriate time.
And then kind of related to that, obviously, that Fix My Street is one example, but proposing repairs. And I think we have touched on that already in this about some improvements to services that are kind of universal. But I'd be keen to know a bit more about how, and I know there is actually changes around the actual delivery of these services. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the vision for a resident with a council tenant with a repair issue, how this service would eventually look for them in terms of the communications they get?
Yeah, good question. So I know housing colleagues are working to the Good Landlord Plan. Set out within the plan is a delivery timetable. One of the elements that's contained within that is talking about an online portal for repairs. I believe that's November, December time 2025. So as part of the response to implementation of the Good Landlord Plan, they'll be sending out how they're going to achieve that, and we'll be giving regular status updates. I don't have specifics on what it's going to look like, how it's going to operate in practice, but as Addy said, we're not taking away the ability for customers, contact us, residents to contact via the other channels, including the phone.
And yeah, just in relation to that, I think what I was kind of trying to get at is updates that residents would get or tenants would get about when their scheduled repair will be done, if it gets pushed back, that kind of very much the council communication element of updates, the effective front face, the service delivery, and how that would be communicated. But yeah, and I just had one final point, if that's, and that was about the kind of the one council kind of seamless service, which we talked about, absolutely very key, and that's very much how the residents see our organisation. I'm keen to get a bit more of a sense on how you see that looking in practice. Obviously, we talked about some objectives in here, but I'm keen to kind of. Only earlier today, I had a resident call me, email me saying they wanted to challenge a parking ticket for being parking on a council estate. And they said the estate's parking team says no, they can't challenge it. But the central parking team says yes, the streets parking team, and there's no just different parking teams within the council that really are sending different messages to the resident. So I'd be keen to know a bit more about that, and also, sorry, big question, but also how councillors, the role of councillors fit into all of it. One of the things that's been exciting in here is about how support and to an extent augment the service of the role of a councillor. And so, yeah, if we're able to kind of deliver this one council service, then
Thank you. Really good questions. So in terms of the approach, for me, it's more about culture from an organisation perspective, and we set that, and that gets delivered over a period of time. And one of the questions earlier was around how do we measure that? Kind of answer the response to that. But for me, key is training and development as a starting point. Then the measure, how are we ensuring that's embedded, and then the practice, and that comes from all levels within the organisation. It's not just, from a leadership perspective, we're setting the direction, then we need to ensure that the enthusiasm, the delivery, and the approach to how we measure it is at the forefront of everything that we do. So we're hoping that the strategy, the plan, sets that out very clearly from a promise perspective, and certainly from our perspective as embedding that as the professional leads within the council. We will do our utmost to ensure that that happens. It's, as I said earlier, responsibility of everybody to ensure that that happens, and we will report back on a regular basis to make sure that's the case.
I also think with this plan, which is, I think, different to the previous iterations we've had over the years around sort of how people get in touch with us and how we actually deal with their queries and their complaints, is that this has had support and has support across all of the directorates across the council. It isn't just sitting in one place. So that in itself makes it the start of the one council approach. This isn't something, and as I said earlier, this is something that it is a 5-year plan. As things adapt, we are going in 18 months' time to do another survey. We'll incorporate the learnings of that into the plan around it. It's not like the old days where you pick up shelf, love for dust, and then open it up. So, oh yeah, that's that. Yeah, this really has to be intuitive and work and adapt as all good plans and policies should as well. But I think the start of it is the fact that this is the starting point of this is that we've done this in a way we've never done it before. We've gone out to residents, we've gone out to businesses, we've asked them what their experiences are. We've identified those those journeys that residents have, which do have the most pain for them in it, and what could be made better. And that's very much been the starting point of this. It's also had that buy-in across council at a higher level around it. So this, for me, is different to the way we've ever done it before. And I think that starts it on a good foundation, actually. Is it perfect? Probably not, because nothing's ever perfect, but has it got the possibilities to adapt and evolve? Absolutely, around that. But I think it is that constant monitoring, isn't it, and pulling it all together and sort of reminding everybody why we had this. And I think that's the real reason we had it, because we need to do the right thing by our residents and make sure that we're serving them.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions, if I may. So there's in the transforming customer experience pillar, paper talks about third parties delivering services on the council's behalf will also be expected to meet these standards and will be held accountable if they fall short. Just wondered if you could talk about how they'll be held accountable, how that will be enforced, and have we got plans to embed that in on things like procurement, contracts, management, etc.
I'll start on the last bit. Absolutely, we've just agreed with Fair Futures Southwark 2030 procurement framework from the Procurement Act, and absolutely there is more rigour around that sort of the tendering side of things and contract management. We've also just agreed a social value framework as well. So those two things combined will help support that as well. So it's very much through that new procurement framework we can absolutely sort of set out what our expectations are from the people who need and want to purchase services from us or deliver services for us around that. So I think there is scope around that. I know I keep referring to lots of different things, but actually I think we've had a whole suite of different types of, in my part of the world, lots of different suites of different types of new policies and procedures and that all complement each other and actually feed into each other. They're not sitting in isolation. They're all talking to each other. Yeah, they're all working. They dovetail quite nicely into each other as well. So I think there's the opportunity, the fact that the things that can drive this all sit within that sort of directorate around it and have all been drawn up and designed in mind of each other as well.
Yeah, thank you. As part of that procurement framework, there's a review of procurement to ensure we've got a consistent approach to how we manage contracts within the council, and very much that's at the heart of ensuring that our contractors deliver to the expectation, not just within the contract, but within wider policy such as this. going forward. But that's really about training development, but also holding people to account. So, 20 years we've appointed a number of different contracts in the council. Contract management is key. That consistent approach is also key.
Thank you. I had a query about sort of sequencing. If the customer standards aren't agreed yet, does that work? But it sounds like the procurement framework will refer to whatever the customer are approved. Yeah, understood. Thank you. And then further questions just on, so as I mentioned earlier, I really love the accountability of in 18 months we're going to do more research and we're going to validate, see that we're going in the right direction on this. Are we confident that so that sort of research isn't cheap if you do it properly? Are we confident that we'll have the right budgets in place at that point in time, and if we want to repeat that exercise into the future during this 5-year period of the plan?
Yeah, we have to get this right, don't we? And I think the thing about this is that Dom and his team don't just look after sort of customer experience. Cost of living work sits very much with Dom's director, and this is what we did with cost of living support that we did. We got external evaluation around it and took on board the recommendations from that. So I think the team themselves have got that experience of being able to look at who the best people are to come in and do that and deliver that. And there is experience, albeit in a different field, of actually then building a better offer or a better service around that as well. So as cabinet member, I have confidence that Dom and the team will be able to do it, and actually the plan will strengthen.
And one final one from me. So there is a mention in the measuring our success section just around we'll respond to all stage 1 complaints within 10 days and stage 2 complaints within 15. There's nothing in there about would we expect to see a reduction in complaints going to stage 2 or beyond versus resolved at stage 1. I just wondered if that had come up in the thinking or none at all.
Thank you. Good question. Yeah, it's very much it's a daily conversation that's taking place around levels. Firstly, complaints are upheld, how we reduce them, and that's a whole cross-council piece of work that takes place. I mean, it's at the highest profile. It's discussed on a fortnightly basis at the corporate management team. And strategic directors discussing that about how we reduce complaints across the council, including members' inquiries. And we are seeing a reduction in the number of held complaints. We've still got a not insignificant volume of complaints coming through, and that tends to be focused around certain areas, and there's plans in place to help reduce that. So yeah, it is discussed. There's a significant profile around it, and we're looking at how we can best reduce that.
There's also political oversight on it, because if obviously Dom and the team have to come to me and they come to the leader around that, and with the plans of what we're doing. So I get all those figures on a monthly basis, and they come to me and I can see sort of the trends, and I do challenge on them. I think, I want to say a bit of good news around sort of members' inquiries. In terms of members' inquiries and response time, every single department now, the average is 8 working days now to respond. If you strip out housing, still have they have the lion's share of inquiries and service requests and complaints around that, to the actual sheer volume that comes in around those. But for other departments, we've now got to 8 working days, which is the no mean feat to get to there as well on it. But there is always we can always do a lot better, and I do push them, and I do push you guys on that quite regularly around it as well.
I can attest we're very much held to account by Councillor Crine. In terms of stage 1 complaints, we actually reduced how we measure the response times from 15 days to 10 working days last year. That took effect from June. So the percentage of complaints, as Councillor Crine was saying, whilst we've seen performance improvement, we've actually reduced the responsiveness timescale that we expect service departments to respond to complaints in. So it with that as the background, there is service improvement. Could we do better? Of course, and we're working hard to ensure that's the case.
Helpful. And just to push on the point of, would we include something in our measures around proportion that go to stage 2 or beyond versus we want earlier on? That's not in the plan at the moment. Is that something you take away and look at?
Thank you. Really good point. We'll take that away.
I think that's the whole point of coming to this pre-scrutiny. It's really, is there anything we've missed? Is there anything else we should incorporate it, rather than come to you after it's been agreed by Cabinet and say, this is the plan, that there's no really little scope to change or add anything to it as well. So I just, we felt that this is something that really was really the right thing to bring for. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay, just wanted to wrap up on I think some of the things we are recommending. So some of the notes I made were particularly want to just see called out explicitly the customer experience capital projects, how we're as a council dealing with our residents who are experiencing that, and how we can, that is one I included more explicitly. There was the smaller point around complaints versus members' inquiries and just how that's classified. There was the point that I made earlier just around, can we just really stare at the language in the plan to make sure that it makes sense to the sort of street. And then that last point on just the stages in the map. Is there anything else that Thank you very much. Very valuable discussion. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item then. So we're, as I mentioned earlier, the Streets of People zoning consultation will come for scrutiny in the autumn. So we'll then skip over item 5 to item 6 on playgrounds. So this item's been requested to support the proposed review on play spaces. And the scope was circulated with the work programme welcome officers to talk to us about this. If you could just introduce yourselves and some time to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, I'm Tony Ainge and I'm Director of Leisure. We don't have a formal, but I will say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Tara Quinn. I'm the Head of Parks and Natural Environment.
Thank you. So hopefully the report sets out sort of a broad overview of where we are with playgrounds, and I just really want to get a little bit of the context before I pass over to Tara. It's fair to say we're on a journey, and I think the challenge was made probably 12 plus months ago about how we manage our play facilities. And one of the things I wanted to say tonight is our job title gives it away, but we're both in the parks area, the leisure area. But what we are doing is working really closely across housing. And I think the report hopefully emphasises that. So what we're really trying to be a one council approach on playgrounds, but clearly there are the constraints between general fund and HRA. But what we can do and what we're doing, and I recommend for that, is to make sure that we are still taking that one council approach. We're really clear that we've got CDP targets related to playgrounds, and also that linked to Southwark 2030, the Good Start for Life goal. So I guess we are convening, influencing, and doing all we can in the housing space at the moment. I'm talking to the director and via Alex, my strategic director, about how we can do better. But we're definitely on the journey. I just want, because I know for members and for residents of the public, a playground is a playground. But for officers, there are some constraints and some various things that we're trying to why it might seem.
So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come and talk about some of the work that we've been doing over the last 18 months. I think one of the key drivers was the council delivery plan target number 55, which was talking about that the council was to provide great playgrounds for children of all ages and ensure that wherever someone lives in Southwark, they have access to local high quality playgrounds, including equipment for children with disabilities. That was a key driver in terms of the recent set of work that we've been doing. But what it did do was help reinforce the importance of play and provide a foundation for further investment in play across the borough. The report actually does set out the previous play investment that has taken place across housing and parks, and that's set out in table 1. One of the first pieces of work that we did as part of moving forward on the play agenda was carry out a high-level audit. This looked at who manages what across the council, As you can imagine, when we last did it, officers have changed, time had moved on, investment had happened, so we felt that we needed to recalibrate that data. So we also mapped the locations of the play areas and sort of again identified who was managing what. We also identified some criteria to look at the condition of those playgrounds, and then that was to drive a more strategic approach to investment. We also looked at how play is managed across the council to see what opportunities there were for collaborative working, improvement in asset management, raising the standards, so to speak. And out of that, we created a working group of a number of officers from different departments across the council, including housing and parks, planning, cleaner, greener, safer, anyone who was involved in either the maintenance of play or investment in play, and we're trying to pull them together. Even though we've got colleagues from health in the team as well, and we often have guest speakers coming from various projects, etc. That group meets once a quarter, and as I said before, it's really about opportunities for better management, opportunities for smart working, all with the aim of improving our play provision across the borough. The audit also informed the next stage of investment in the parks play, and last October we were allocated a further £3 million worth of play investment, and the details of where that's being spent is in the report. But as Tony's been saying, it's really driven a cross-council approach to working on play, and we're still on that journey, and we're still looking for opportunities in how we can do that better. But I think the fact that we've brought all of those teams and departments together has been very, very useful.
Thank you. Any questions for Leo and then Maggie? Okay.
Could you just speak more about the adventure playgrounds? So I actually don't know a lot about two of them, so perhaps you speak about them just for my information. That the Peckham Rye one has obviously been not in use for a period of time, significant period. So just if you could talk us through why that is, what the sort of long-term plan is, and yeah, just a bit more information about that, and when the kind of long-term strategy for maintaining our adventure playgrounds and that they are in use, you know, for the borough and for children and families. I know it matters to a lot of people, and so I know at Peckham Rye because it's in my patch, not my ward but my sort of area, and I don't know much about the other two, but you comment on them as well, please. Thank you.
So we currently manage directly 3 adventure play sites, and then we also have arrangements on 2 further adventure play areas at Bethwyn and Dog Kennel Hill. So there is an investment programme that is currently underway, and I think it was last spring when the adventure playground at Mint Street, the one at Mint Street was opened, and the investment in that has actually proved a huge success. From what we're hearing from our youth services team who manage our adventure play sites, there's basically queues going out the door with the popularity of that site. In terms of Peckham Rye, I think that site is currently due for completion later on this year, December 2025. It's been through a significant consultation process. I think there have been a couple of delays, but as I say, that's now on track and will be completed later on this year.
Could you elaborate for us, like what led to its closure and information that way?
So I think there was an assessment of the equipment, and basically some of it had reached the end of its serviceable life. So it's a case of it needs to be replaced, and in order for it's the main attraction of the centre. So in order for that to continue, it's a case of we just needed to put new equipment back in.
I can just add to that. So we found not only in the adventure play sites, but on some of the other open access play, some of the timber that had been used in previous decades didn't have what we would now expect, which is the steel feet, so that it goes directly into the ground, it rots, and so that's what I had placed. And I can also add a little bit about the other two adventure playgrounds. So Dog Kennel Hill and Bethwyn are both run by trusts, and we're working with Dog Kennel Hill at the moment to work through the best way of spending the money that we have. We have some money, there's equipment requirements, but they also have an ambition for a new building. So we have been backwards forwards a little bit on, but there is some funding there to get some replacement when we do the best.
I may just follow up on the Peck and Rye point. So how are we thinking strategically moving forward to avoid the situation where we have a long gap between essentially playgrounds being closed, equipment around very vacant, quite stark for local residents, and that being delivered and renewed? Feels like we've probably been reactive in that instance. How can we avoid that in future?
I think starting point is the audit. We know now what we've got much better and what needs addressing. And I think we're also learning, so we're also increasing the parks capacity for the project team. So we've got 2 new project managers and a programme manager starting in August. I can't speak on the housing side, but that's the park side. And I think my reflections also, because we've asked ourselves the questions, myself, Laura and Deborah, who delivers capital, about what seems like a long period of time between something failing and something else going in. I think some of it was about resource, and so we've sought to address that by bringing in additional resource. I think we also sometimes get into a bit of a consultation loop where we consult and then we change and then we reconsult, and that takes longer than it should do. I appreciate we're absolutely committed to consultation, but sometimes I look back and think, well, what's happening? Oh, it's further consultation. Sometimes we have planning. I'm not saying that planning is slow. There's no, but with very tall towers, you have to go through planning. So that often adds 3 to 6 months to something. And then there are other occasions, clearly not with adventure play, but there are other occasions when we get given, which is great, but we get given a very small amount of CGS, and then the community tell us they want a full replacement playground or whatever, but we've got £5,000 or £10,000 for something that they have, once we consulted, suggested they were like, £100,000, and it gets stuck. So I think it's a combination of those things. We're trying to address those. Firstly, we understand more about our kit, so we're not being as reactive. We've got a bit more resource. We need to try and make sure that consultation, whilst robust, is speedy. We need to try and make sure that if it, there have been occasions we said, let's not put in tall towers because then we'd have to go to planning, for example, and then trying to work through some sort of pooled funding approach so that we're not just looking at this amount of money and thinking it's not. So we're not there, but that's our sort of reflections on what we're doing.
Yeah. David.
He says it's brief.
Thank you. Yeah, it's literally just one quick thank you. And it was a very related follow-up because we had what you mentioned about going out to consultation and realising you have that funds. I've got a specific example of that in my own ward of Rye Lane with Dr. Harold Moody Park. Obviously, there was we've just finished the completion of some works where the parks have been joined together. There's been a lot of misunderstanding from the community about what they thought was going to happen on the site. There were also kind of discussions about phase 2 that would involve wider regeneration of the park facility and the play facility. And there's been a kind of the impact on the ground has been that residents have felt that they've not got the they were expecting because the actual funding for the play equipment was in place, but the funding was actually skewed to. So yeah, I'd be keen to hear you elaborate a little bit more about how we kind of manage expectations on residents' part, and also whether Dr. Harold Moody Park will actually feature in the pipeline later on down the track.
Yes, certainly. So that was sort of the first question I asked when I got the feedback from the event that happened there quite recently. And there is a logic to having, so sites when there's a lot of change required or aspirations for change often have a master plan developed. And that the reason behind that mainly is to try and secure external funding. So you give out the whole vision about what the future would look like. I think what happened in that instance is that the communication wasn't clear enough. that whilst this was the overall aspiration, we only currently had funding to do the development of it, and I think that's a piece of learning, which is being taken away by the team and considered. And you asked the second question, I've forgotten. You didn't. Oh,
It was just about whether Dr. Harold Moody Park will be in the pipeline for play improvements. It's not. I know there's a potential phase 2, but it's not listed in here.
yes, I'm reluctant to answer that because I know that Councilman Granjay and Deborah have been having conversations which I haven't caught up on recently. So I'd like to say yes, but I don't think we've got the funding. But I wouldn't like to cut across the cabinet members. So if I could come back to you on that one.
Theo.
All right, now we go. It's up now. I mustn't disappoint. Firstly, just to acknowledge that the Parks Department do deliver parks. In my experience, Shuttleworth Park is a very good, small, very well designed park, and the Ellen Brown Edge Playground also the other end of my ward. Yeah, that's right. However, in terms of stuff missing from this list, I mentioned this actually in the previous item. We put all of our local SIL in 2020 into one project. We didn't have a lot of it still, which was to do a big new playground where on Alexis Street, Bull Road Estate. And it's 1,600 days now since that point in time. I won't bore you with the whole story, but it is ludicrous. It's diabolical how long it's taken, the unresponsiveness, the number of escalations, the leaders, the chief exec, several cabinet members, and it's not in your department, but there is part of me that is screaming inside because of this list. I can't believe it, because we just made such a fuss about it. It's a really important park in an area that's missing, that has no play provision. The park at the minute in total disrepair. Alexa Street in South Bermondsey Ward, Great Estate, next to a primary school. It's also planned to be part of a wider upgrade of a green space that can become a park. There's great opportunities to incorporate into the existing features. So can I get high on your minds, on your inbox, the importance of that project to be taken forward? Is currently sat with Regen. There have been numerous briefs agreed by the community and council over many years. A decision on the way forward. It just goes round and round in circles, and it should never ever be the case. Playground project, that's the playground, is delayed in this way, and I'm just eager that is captured in the view that's going. Sorry to start on a moany basis, but I was just astounded it wasn't there. The two that are South Bermondsey Ward, Vendel and Ruby. I'm not in South Bermondsey Ward. You're referring to Vendel Street. That's not London Bridge, but minor thing. Just working table 5. All our local stuff. A very long period of time. And the problem with that delay is that we lost a lot of the value of all of our small part of local SIL to inflation. Those funds could have been forward for external project management to just get the thing going. We were putting forward that could happen. So I'm just eager that really not happening again. It's not in your department, but because of an overall play approach. In terms of some other bits and bobs, I'd be eager that there is a full all-single dancing play strategy rather than one that's sort of ensconced in a leisure strategy or that is bounded by directorate borders. Just because you can capture play in so many ways. Obviously, playgrounds are absolutely critical, and there's a lot of good priorities, disabilities, ages, variety of equipment, integrations, natural landscapes, and so on. But I'd love to see a much stronger emphasis on play in the public realm, play in the tree strategy as well. We don't manage our trees in a way that makes them favourable to climb. For instance, walls. I've got a 3-year-old set as a wall actually walk along it. Sometimes quite annoying, but actually, yes. I do see bits of public realm that just have nothing for kids and it's our environment. So, and I'd also be keen that as part of that, do real exploration into all the best practice for child-friendly design of housing, places, neighbourhoods. I don't know if that's something for this Scrutiny Commission maybe to look at. There's lots of recent work I'm aware of that is promoting this agenda again. I think Dina Borna, very important, but recently it's got traction. Be an option to kind of bring some of their findings into our work. A couple of other bits on adventure playgrounds. I just want to emphasise the unbelievable importance of them being staffed wherever possible. And I know we've got financial decisions to make, but just my view, they're so important. They're life-changing, particularly for people with special educational needs. And you know, I always think it's just be a really high priority in terms of how we choose to budget play. Another bit just on adventure playgrounds in general. I'm glad there's recognition of the importance of trusts that kick on about a period of time lapse between, say, like Peckham Rye, for instance. I know loads of people who would have loved to be involved in repair that equipment, and really loved when it was closed down by a lot, very well used. And there are trusts, not just within the borough, but further afield that we could potentially approach, and also, you know, appetite for community involvement in managing them and repairing them and so on. One other adventure playground that's not mentioned in here is in Rotherhithe. That's been closed for a very long time. That was set aside as a potential site for the Ebony Horse Club. We had a petition for 2,000 people, and the deal was it won't get stuff done. As far as I'm aware, that's fizzled out, which I think is a tragedy because the wider kind of health benefit opportunities for teenagers for animals. Just, you know, we have this charity ready to come and set up a second site in the borough, which would have been a very big deal. So I'm just eager for sites like that. It's not mentioned here, but paper future versions. We've got an account of what will happen with sites like that, or how we'll proactively put them out to trusts, charities that could make use of them. And a couple of other things I just want to finish on. Go on forever this. One is no ball game signs. Let's just get rid of them completely. Lambeth have done it. Don't know why we still haven't done it. And where you don't want ball games, they can be replaced with ball games welcome in this place nearby. So we've tried to do that with a little project where people go around in the car park and there's a site with a little, like 1 minute away. So I'm just eager that that's like a hard policy that we try to embrace or encourage the action. Could go ask on that. But yeah, it's a big improvement.
So just to answer your question about Alexis Street, so the housing projects that are listed in the report are the ones for completion for this year. There is a much more extensive spreadsheet of investment. We just, with housing colleagues, we just put the ones in for this year. Alexis Street is on that list of the much more extensive list of play investment, but it is quite extensive because it includes all of the CGS play investment. So as part of the working group, I manage a play investment spreadsheet that collates all of the play investment that we're aware of across the council. And as soon as any project is completed, it then goes on a record sheet so that we can keep sort of a record of what we have invested in over the years. So I can assure you it is.
I'm just wary of this document being anyone involved in that project. Like it could potentially feature in table 3 to play.
I was going to say it would be helpful mind sharing that wider spreadsheet for our reference.
Yeah, table 3 I think is just for the parks
Well, yeah, from a resident's perspective,
Yes,
it's a park and
I appreciate
playground
that, but obviously when we're trying to sort of explain
I
it,
know,
or
I know.
we're trying to sort of separate it out because
it's not
they are
funded by
approached quite
it's not
differently.
delivered by housing.
Yeah.
It's not funded. So there's a case to just move. You guys run it.
Did you want to come back?
I can do, yeah. So your point on the play strategy, understood. We are currently looking at the leisure strategy, so that's across the whole piece, and that would be pretty relevant. And below that, there will be other example things. And there are a couple of statutory things linked in as well. We have had conversations about the play strategy, so we'll take that point away. It's a resource. It's not that's not a reason not to. So that's that one. You also mentioned adventure play and staffing, and yeah, I couldn't agree. We've had real difficulty recruiting staff. Also, to our youth services, I think it's the short-term nature of the role, so it's sort of 3 hours, 3 times a week, which makes it quite difficult. But we are much better staffed now, so we are seeking to maintain that. And in relation to trust and working with the community, absolutely. In terms of working with the community, I'm a little bit reticent about handing over maintenance because we have an obligation in terms of health and safety for the sites, and I think some of the issues we've had things probably put in many decades ago that don't comply with the standards, that have an efficacy or whatever, and then we have people fail. So I think it's that balance between absolutely we need to consult, listen, and engage, and where we can work together. But I think I would rather retain the maintenance of the sites that the council has to look after because they're sort of in our unit.
Yeah, just on that, I wasn't suggesting give hand over maintenance and more the supervised maintenance, right, particularly where there's apples. People in the community who might have good schedule to do have that sense of ownership of these sites.
And then the last two, I'll pick up. Sorry, Doc, if you could. Oh yeah, I'll come back on. And so in relation to Surrey Docks, that's being managed by colleagues in Sustainable Growth. It has been an active live project. I understand there may be some difficulties, which perhaps we could pick up outside of the meeting, but it's certainly not just fizzled out. And we've had engagement quite regularly with colleagues in Sustainable Growth, so I can confidently say it's not just fizzled out, but I know there are challenges there on that one.
So just going back to your suggestion around having more active travel or active play travel, strange phrase, for young people in terms of you talking about your daughter being on a wall. So I do know that we are working with Streets for People colleagues on a number of areas from our team trees, ecology, etc. But also play is one of those. And how can we ensure, like in between one point and another, there might be something interesting for children to do as they're going to school or something like that. So there is discussions about that sort of thing, but linked in with Streets for People because we think that's a good setting for that. So that's a work in progress. No ball games is a really interesting one actually, and I know there's a campaign about this. I saw a video recently that was really yes, I think it was for England actually, which did give pause for thought. What I'll do is I'll pick this up with housing colleagues, and that could we look at something that's more positive, informing young people where they can play and where it is great to play ball sports rather than a no all the time.
Yeah, yes. Ball games encouraged over time, and when there's complaints, the automatic pontificating over it should be the think about how you're going to make it playing a ball game just from a different where some people still, but good stuff for like
Well, what I can do is I can promise to pick that with housing colleagues because I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf, but I'm sure they'd be interested to look at this, and then we can report back at one of the later meetings this year.
I wanted to pull on the thread a little bit of the play strategy, leisure strategy piece. So I feel like there's lots of the things that we're talking about this evening would be good things to include in the play strategy in terms of the direction we want to go. We know when we might expect that. I appreciate it's leisure strategy is the umbrella, but when are we planning to develop that play strategy?
So the leisure strategy is under development at the moment with a view to it being under consideration by members after, say, June next year. So it will be a time after that, and what we'll have to do over the next couple of and look at resources. There are some things we actually have to do because they're statutory, as I said, and they will have to take the priority because otherwise we can't get to the right place in the local plan and all the things we need to for leisure. But we need to have that conversation. So I guess that's a long way round of saying it is unlikely to be 26. It will more likely be 2027. But what we can do is make sure that the key points coming out of this scrutiny commission, are picked up in some way and amplified in at least that high level leisure strategy, part and parcel of it. So we just need to think about how we do that best so that there's two levels to it.
That's helpful. I think we have as a commission a good opportunity to feed into that in early stages. That's good to hear. So something you mentioned earlier around HRA pressures and good to see that the play working group has been convened and to enable that cross departmental working, given our residents do just see parks of playgrounds. Are there discussions ongoing about where the management of state playgrounds should sit? And are we wedded to the idea that it continues to be HRA versus general fund, housing versus parks, or are there conversations going around that?
So at our level, we are working much more as a seamless whole. I understand there have been conversations around how we might do that even more seamlessly. But perhaps that's something I can come back to at a later stage. It's a sort of valid Hakeem conversation. That I think the challenge was made by members months ago, and it has been going through that process. But I'm not really in place to say something tonight. But if I take that away, and so there are conversations that I couldn't go into.
We'll come on to talking about the work programme for this commission and future meetings, but I would suggest that would be a good opportunity for something to follow up in one of our future meetings. And then a couple of sort of points from the report. So talks about the play working group being about sharing best practice, aligning standards in design, management, maintenance, and improving the play offer. Do we have set standards written anywhere? So you will have just heard we've the customer experience plan, there'll be a set of customer standards around that. Do we have a set of play standards or design standards that we expect all of our departments to adhere to?
Absolutely, they're national standards. For example, there are guidelines for inspections. So in terms of the actual asset management, there are guidelines. In terms of design, there are very strict guidelines for health and safety to ensure that whilst it may be risky play, it is still safe. So it's quite highly regularised. And as the report explains, both housing and parks have external auditors come in each year to inspect all of the playgrounds and provide works and recommendations, etc. That would be, I think it's ROSPA guidelines that we work to, that we comply with, and then we have the internal inspections carried out each month. Yes, it is highly regulated.
Thank you. I wonder if you could just tell me a bit more about, more broadly, in the improvement projects that are underway or in the pipeline, how do we go about designing those? What's the process? Who do we involve? Talked about some of the standards. You talked a little bit briefly earlier about the consultation, but I'd love to know a bit more about that start to finish on the design process.
So if I give you an example, it depends on the level of investment and the size of the project. But typically, if we are awarded capital, for example, we have a scheme at the moment, Surrey Square Gardens. It's been given a significant amount of capital because we would like it to be a flagship play destination. And so we will consult internally with all the departments that would be involved in that and form a working group. Our policy and programs team would have an allocated project manager to that scheme, and then they would set out a project initiation document. That document then has to be approved by our cabinet member, and that sets out the journey that project will go on. Usually with the policy and programs team on a scheme that size, they will get some initial designs and ideas, and they will go out to consultation to local residents, community groups, sports groups if that's relevant, local play groups, etc., and young people especially. They will then take the feedback from that. They will amend the designs or choose a design. It can be quite fluid depending on the project, and then what they do is they go back and they report to the community what changes have been made as a result of the feedback, and then sharing the new designs that will be rolled out. There's usually typically there would be a database of people who want to be kept posted about that project. We often keep board councillors up to date as well as the project moves through various stages. And then the procured works are carried out. A inspection has to take place by an external ROSPA qualified play inspector before the playground can actually be opened, and then we usually have a celebratory launch event, and that's a very high level quick description of the journey that would go through. There's a lot of different, and as Tony mentioned before, that could involve planning. Sometimes we look at doing, for example, at Dickens Fields, we did a road closure and extended the park as part of the play offer. So it really does vary from project to project. And we do a plan of consultation that is appropriate to the project. If there is a project that is basically about replacing a piece of equipment, then we scale that down. And we usually involve the friends of groups. But it's a rather than drag something out, we like to get the equipment replaced really quickly. That doesn't always follow that way. Sometimes if a community would like more consultation on something, then we absolutely tailor it to that.
Well, thank you. Could you talk a little bit more about how do we take into account the needs of particular groups as we're going through that design process? So whether that be disabled young people and children or girls particularly, how is that taken into?
I think that's something we're getting better at. I know that within the Parks and Policy Programme team, all of their playgrounds in some way, shape or form for some time have been accessible and inclusive. However, there are always developments in this area, and we're looking to enhance that as we go further forward. We often, or the team often go and visit other sites on any of their projects to learn from best practice elsewhere, and do try to consult as best as they can with all groups to improve in terms of the provision, making it as inclusive as possible. Young women and girls, or little girls, is an area that we're looking at being more specific about. There is a project at the moment in GMH Park that actually there is a school nearby which is a girls' school. So I think there's some particular consultation going on there, and looking at it and getting feedback from their perspective. So I think that's an area that we're definitely developing further as we go forward, as part of our work around making parks and open spaces more accessible to young women, females. So it's something that is definitely developing. It's something I think that we're looking to do better at. And we also then within the capital programme have £500,000 allocated from the 3 million that was given last October around improving. I think we've nominated 3 playgrounds to start with to make them more inclusive. And what we've tried to do is identify a sort of an area in the borough that doesn't have as an inclusive playground as it could, and look at those spaces whilst we work our way through a programme that actually eventually all playgrounds would be inclusive, and that is our aim.
thank you very much for coming along. Some really good sort of context information for us, I think, particularly with the broader review that we have in mind as a commission. We'll come on to that in a second with the work programme moving forward. It feels like there was a couple of takeaways, particularly the ball games sign piece feels like one sooner rather than later, rather than waiting for the outputs of the review. And I know there was some particular regarding so thank you very much for your time. Thank you. So before we get onto the work programme, as the last item, we have Cabinet response to the biodiversity scrutiny review completed by the Environment Scrutiny Commission last year. So it was enclosed in the papers. Obviously, the Commission is constituted. But are there any comments on that response from Cabinet? That report? Yeah.
I contributed to that. I just want to say how amazing it is. We made 34 recommendations, and all of them had full, thoughtful responses. And that's not always the case in every council or in government in general. So I just thought that was very healthy. We argued, so I'll say, for every one of them. But yeah, it's great. We've got fantastic ecology officers doing all we can. So I think it's always an area I think we should revisit quite regularly. There's lots of half answers, more than I could bother to list right now, and lots of areas where it's maybe the work program have a look. That's good.
So obviously I wasn't on the committee last year, Chair, neither was Councillor Parton. So I also note that the vast array of recommendations and the detailed responses. I think my request would just be that that sort of perhaps within a 12-month period, we see where the progress is on these. We'd have to look at them individually to see, which or timelines and things like that. But I think it's clearly a lot of work went into it from the committee and from officers in response. And it seems very encouraging in terms of our biodiversity commitments. And I think I'd just like to know this time next year, how's it all going?
I'd agree with that. I think it'd be good to track through the progress on those recommendations and the response. Yeah.
I think also there's just a lot of scope for policy development in all of this as well, which might be one for Labour or Lib Dem colleagues present. Think about.
Indeed. So we'll move on then to the final item, just on the work programme. So it was enclosed in the papers, and we have quite a remit, this commission. I think it's better to look at the cabinet members that we don't have within the remit of the commission. But it's good because it means we've got a lot of scope and choice in terms of what we look at. Now we had a number of proposals for scrutiny. We've got some items that are already planned in on the work programme, but that we can decide to move forward with or change as we want. So some of the items that we've got on the work programme already, I mentioned the Streets for People piece, which will come back in the autumn. There was a couple of requests that came in via the new scrutiny proposal process around fly tipping and waste management in general. So I felt like there was a good opportunity to have a conversation with the deputy cabinet member on that, and tie in potentially the recycling rates and food recycling item, which also came up through those proposals. There was a recommendation to bring from the cabinet member to bring the climate emergency strategy and action plan update through as well. And then a bit of a to be confirmed on the community safety independent review as to whether that would go to OSC or here, but it feels like a good chunky item that I'd quite like this commission to be able to look at, but we can discuss that. And then in terms of what has been scheduled then, so on page 6 of the work programme report, the broader review, which is also included in the report on play spaces, the session that we had this evening from Tony and Tara, with setting the scene on playgrounds, I think was a helpful first part of the conversation, but I think it would be helpful to have follow-ups, particularly diving into playgrounds, play spaces in the borough, and what I've sort of planned in here at the moment, but it'd be good to have a discussion around is, do we spend some time in the October meeting getting some external voices in? So Make Space for Girls as an organisation that does what it says on the tin. So it's about how do we encourage space and play for girls. London Play is another organisation that was mentioned as well, and we tie that in, subject to availability, with the interview with the cabinet member for Parks and Young People at the same time. And then we've penciled in a space in the November meeting as well for some further evidence around play spaces, following our learnings from the October meeting. So we can leave that open potentially to plan in when we get to the October meeting and we see the outputs of that. And then broadly thinking, then we follow up with the cabinet member for Clean Air, Streets and Waste, and plus the deputy cabinet member to talk about the recycling and fly tipping elements, perhaps in the following meeting. And then we've got the climate emergency strategy and action plan update penciled in for the one after that. So we only have four further meetings following this one. There's a fair amount to get through, and that's not including if we want to do the community safety review, which feels like it could be a chunky one. So yeah, just wanted to have a bit of a discussion around that. Do they feel like the right priorities? Anything to add?
Where are you hoping to put the community safety one in the November meeting potentially?
So I think it would be potentially be November.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Chair, it had slightly passed me by how you gained items into your commission. Congratulations. Okay, understood. So I'm a bit more clear now that we're engaging on not just environment. Okay, thank you.
It might sound niche, but it's not. So, hear me out. But this looks like a really good agenda. I feel like there is agenda space in here. If there's not, that's fine. The largest open space in the borough is the River Thames, and the upper and lower pool. Maggie's smirking, but she knows where I'm going. And it's undergoing a major change in the next year with the Super Sewer project switching on, which will radically change the water quality, and with it, the way in which people from Southwark can engage with the river, in terms of leisure, in terms of a habitat in particular. And we just don't have any policy or any strategy, any kind of signposting or anything about we got this really important and famous bit of the river, the upper and lower pool. And there's just so many voices out there who are really passionate about how we engage with the river and how we can develop it as a habitat going forward. So I just feel like it's a distinct but important thing that we ought to have maybe an item on, quite in perhaps people from Port London Authority, Southwark Marina, birth holders, various river-related charities and so on. Try to engage people. That's my only plea that I would make. We have a bit focus on that there.
I think it'd be good to capture that on our sort of work list, and then if we, subject to the piece on the community safety review, which feels like it's very much forefront of lots of minds, if we have capacity following that being scheduled in, whether we look at that as a further piece.
Yeah, we could even go have a trip, get on a boat.
I'm all for trips.
Have a session on a boat. Perfectly good. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think the steer from the OSC meeting we had for the year was where the remit, where it sits within the remit of the commission, the priority will be to make sure that the commission takes it. I know that there is some debate around the policing oversight board report and whether that goes back to OSC rather than here, because that's where it started, and whether it continues there. I think it's an outstanding question as to whether we do that. David.
Thanks, Chair. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what is actually within the scope of the committee?
I can, in brief. So, as I understand it, an independent review was commissioned by the councillor, cabinet lead, on how we're dealing with community safety across departments with the council. That's all I have.
Okay, so it sounds like it's quite broad and potentially quite time consuming. I mean, that makes sense, and yeah, if your preference is that to be in November, then it makes sense. I think one area that obviously I flagged some points to you in terms of areas that I would be keen to look at, but I think one area that could potentially make its way into that community safety discussion is around light pollution and also access to street lighting, but in a community safety aspect. So, I mean, that might just come up as part of the discussion of light streets and making sure safe on the streets at night, and then how that. But I think that makes sense.
Good. Yeah, it'd be good to wrap that in. I think there are a number of things that came through in terms of scrutiny proposals, like use of CCTV, security doors on blocks. They're the sorts of things which I think would be good to raise in a wider ranging conversation on community safety review. My preference that it would come here. Good. So I think broadly for the next meeting, it would be primarily the evidence from some of these external organisations around play review, the interview with the cabinet member, and then also I think about the streets for people piece that we missed this evening in that session. Primarily because I think there's an opportunity to feed into some of the ways of engagement rather than consultation on the streets for people strategy. That's why I was coming through. Any other comments on what? No? Okay. I think that takes us to the end of the meeting. So thank you very much. Maggie?
Just 2 points AOB, Chair. Can I just check if absent colleagues apart from Councillor Manuel sent apologies to you or to the officer?
I didn't receive any apologies.
So I don't know if it would be appropriate perhaps for the officer or the chair to write to colleagues who are absent without apologies and just ask that apologies are given for committee meetings, perhaps. And then just on my own behalf, Chair, can I just record that I'll be on maternity leave from September, so I won't be here for the October-November meeting, but I will liaise with the Chair to try to arrange a reserve to attend in my place.
Thank you. Any other AOB? No? Lovely. Okay. Thank you very much. Close the meeting.